You've learned a lot already about using sources to make your writing more academic. You know how to use quotation marks on direct quotes. And you know how to use citations anytime you borrow words or ideas from a source, whether it's a direct quote or a paraphrase. The first thing you'll do in this module is learn a little more about plagiarism. This time we'll look at plagiarism in music, which should be an interesting topic for you to read about and discuss with your peers. Then you will read several assigned articles to prepare you for writing your own synthesis essay. In this essay, you'll get more practice using sources. It's more challenging, but if you study all of the materials and be patient with yourself, you'll be successful. In this lesson, you're going to learn how to write a synthesis essay. A synthesis essay helps readers understand a topic. This is necessary when a topic is complicated or may have lots of related issues. Let's take the topic of global warming. We know that this is a controversial issue that people disagree on, and you can find a lot of information on this topic. So to do a synthesis essay on this topic, you would read a lot of different sources. Read some articles, look at some charts and graphs. Then you would try to simplify the information in your own mind. There are many theories about how serious it is, what is causing it, and what should be done about it. Topic. This is necessary when a topic is complicated or may have lots of related issues. Let's take the topic of global warming. We know that this is a controversial issue that people disagree on, and you can find a lot of information on this topic. So to do a synthesis essay on this topic, you would read a lot of different sources. Read some articles, look at some charts and graphs. Then you would try to simplify the information in your own mind. There are many theories about how serious it is, what is causing it, and what should be done about it. All of these are possible subjects for an essay. Your job is to pick the one aspect that interests you the most and that you have enough ideas about to write an essay with several body paragraphs. Once you have your topic, you need to come up with a thesis statement. Remember that a thesis statement must have two parts, the topic and the controlling idea. It needs to be complex and something that not everybody already knows. The thesis in a synthesis essay is the point you're going to make for the reader. It should be something that's not easily understood or commonly known, because the point of the synthesis essay is to explain something to the reader. So the writer might come up with a thesis such as this. Most people don't think about the threat of rising sea levels, but the issue will be devastating for people who live near the ocean. This thesis has a topic, the threat of rising sea levels, and a controlling idea. It will devastate people near the ocean. Then the writer is going to think of several examples of that devastation. Remember, we're trying to show this to the reader, so we need several points that will make them understand this problem. These will be the topics of the body paragraphs. Some communities will disappear. Natural protections from storms will disappear. and a lot of money will be lost. Then the writer will use some examples from his different sources to help support these points. Remember, you don't want to have only 3 body paragraphs. 4 or 5 body paragraphs will make your essay more developed and convincing. So look at this writer's ideas and see which ones are complex enough to be dealt with in 2 or more paragraphs. Each of them might be able to work for 2 paragraphs, but the easiest one is probably right here. A lot of money will be lost is pretty general. The writer can divide this topic in a couple of different ways and develop at least 2 good paragraphs. For example, he might decide to have one paragraph about the locals who will lose money because they can't fish or because their homes are destroyed. The writer could have another body paragraph about the money lost internationally because of this community's trouble. Perhaps some international businesses or industries depend on a community affected by rising sea levels. Let's talk a little bit about developing the body paragraphs. Here's the topic of our first body paragraph and the 3 supporting ideas this writer will use to develop that paragraph. Homes near ocean will be underwater, so people will move. Jobs will be lost, so people will move. And people will be afraid to stay, so they will move. Those are the 3 supports for this topic, that communities will disappear. The writer will give a couple of details for each one, and this is where the writer will use his source material. He will give some examples or details from the sources, and those will be quotations or paraphrase, which will need to be cited. For example, with this first supporting idea, the writer might talk about some countries whose populations are mostly near the coast. He might give some examples of this, such as Sri Lanka or Indonesia. Then he would want to use a quote from one of his articles. Here's a good quote to support this point. The writer found this quote in an article he read from International Business Times. Indonesia has already lost 24 small islands off Aceh, North Sumatra, Papua and Riau between 2005 and 2007 to rising sea levels due to climate change. For the second supporting idea, the writer wants to use these details. Tourism will be affected and fishermen will be hurt. But then the writer will want to use a source to help support this point. He decides to use a source from CNN's website about President Obama's visit to Alaska. It says that even Obama is trying to make people aware of the problem with his visit with fishermen in the remote coastal village of Dillingham, where the president wants a distracted public to see the jarring effects of global warming through his own eyes. For the third supporting idea, the writer gives an example of a reason why people would be afraid. Maybe he mentions people being afraid of the high waters that come in from the ocean when there's a storm. This is called storm surge. Then the writer looks in his articles for a quote to back this up. He finds a quote from a weatherchannel.com article that says the risk in South Florida of storm surge flooding will be far higher by 2030. So now the writer has found 3 quotes to go in this paragraph, one for each of his supporting ideas. We just looked at a quote from an outside source for each supporting idea in the first paragraph. That's good if you can find one for each support, but it's okay if you only do that for maybe 2 of the supporting ideas, as long as you have other specific examples for each supporting idea. In other words, a quote is not the only way to give a specific detail. But outside quotes are valuable to your academic writing because they show that you are not the only one who has these ideas. You're showing that other experts also agree with what you're saying. So in your synthesis essay, try to have at least 2 quotes in each body paragraph. You also have to be careful not to have too many quotes in your essay. Generally speaking, an academic essay should not have more than about 10 or 12% source material. So you might have 2 or 3 short quotes in each paragraph. Sources and makes them into some sensible point. It's a good kind of essay to help you start learning to use sources and to get ready for writing research papers. Good luck with your essay. Here is a sample synthesis essay. I'll show you how the writer used sources in the essay. Now, one other thing you should know about a synthesis essay is that teachers can give you different rules about how to write the synthesis essay for their assignment. Some teachers might give you several readings and just ask you to write about those readings and not include other ideas. Some teachers might give you several sources and tell you to add other sources of your own to synthesize. And some teachers will want you to include your own ideas with the synthesis. You'll always want to check with your teacher to see what kind of synthesis he or she wants you to write. In this essay, the student was given several essays to read, and then the student was also told to use his own ideas, and if he wanted to, he could add sources other than the ones that he was assigned. And so I think the student added one more source. In this class, you can do it whichever way you prefer. So remember, the purpose of a synthesis is to show something to the reader that they may not understand. And so in this essay, the writer had a short introduction where he used a hook about the movie The Martian. And then the thesis statement is right here at the end of the introduction. Despite the dangers, more people are starting to think that taking on this challenge and going to Mars are worthwhile and beneficial to mankind. So that's the point that the writer is going to show to the reader. And the writer had several body paragraphs. I think there were 5 body paragraphs. Here's the first reason that he gives why people should go to Mars. He continues that first reason with another aspect of it, and then has another reason here in the 3rd body paragraph. In the 4th body paragraph, the writer talked about another aspect of traveling to Mars. And in the 5th body paragraph, the writer talked about the problems that need to be figured out before a trip to Mars will work. The other thing I want to show you is the sources that the writer put into the essay, the quotes and paraphrases. In the 1st body paragraph, the writer was writing from his own ideas, so he didn't use any source material there. In the 2nd body paragraph, the writer used a quote right here. And you see in this quotation, the writer used attribution. Here's the author's name right here, and this quote is blended into the writer's own words. Here's another quote in the next body paragraph. This time the writer did not use attribution. Instead, the writer used a parenthetical citation at the end of the sentence. This is the author's last name. And you can see the writer used two parts of the quote and blended it with his own words. This is a nicely integrated quotation. After that quotation, in the next sentence, the writer used paraphrase. You see he was using the same source, and he got this idea from that source, so he also put a citation on this paraphrase. In the next body paragraph, the writer used this source here. We have two sentences that have this source, and they're both paraphrased, so you don't see any quotation marks. But the ideas came from the article that the student read. Now notice this citation. It says MacDonald et al. Et al. Means that there were several other authors listed. If your source has more than 3 authors, you can list all of their last names, but we usually shorten it by putting et al. Et al. Is Latin, and it just means there are more, there are others. Notice where the period is in et al. It comes after the L. There's no period after the T in et. In the next body paragraph, the writer used that same source again, but this time for a quotation. And notice the writer just used a small part of the quote with those very specific words. There's another source further down in the paragraph. This is from a different source, and here's the author's last name. There's no quotation marks again because this is a paraphrase. Notice that all of these sources are used as details in the body paragraphs. None of them start the paragraphs. Each paragraph has a topic sentence, and then the quotations and paraphrases are used as details to support that topic sentence.